Here's what you missed on the Mike Brown Morning Show.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a prosperous morning. I hope you've been able to spend some time with God. I hope that you were able to talk to him and tell him how much you thank him, tell him how grateful you are to be alive. I know I'm grateful, man. I don't take anything for granted, any day for granted. The fact that I'm breathing, I don't take it for granted, because the truth of the matter is it could have gone another way. And we know how 2020 has been going. We know how we've seen things that we have never seen before and that we never thought that we would see. But God, in his infinite power, he decided to let us stick around and see another day and live another day to be able to talk about it. I'm excited today. We got a lot that's going on, a lot happening in the news again, of course. And then today, we're going to go over chapter 4 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We're going to talk about that. So, I need you to just go grab somebody. I want these conversations to happen together. I don't want anybody to miss it. So if you know somebody that they may be working, they may be driving, they may just be chilling at the house, man. Grab your cup of coffee and your tea or whatever. Get your notepad if you're not working, and let's just have the conversation today. And right now I'm gonna play a song. I'm gonna call it the A selection, because after I come back and talk about what I want to talk about to start the show, then it's gonna be a B selection. So here's the A selection. This is All Things Work Together, Bishop Herman Murray and Full Gospel Holy Temple Mass Choir. It's the Mike Brown Morning Show. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back.
You might as well put your hands together.
If I would have kept that playing, the church people was going to be on the floor on this Friday morning. You would have been running around your office, running around the house. That's one of them inside things. Like if you don't go to church, I think you just don't understand that. I think it's not translated. I was about to say translatable. I guess that could be a word though. Able to translate. But yeah, the point of the matter is everybody not going to understand that. That's just like if you don't understand football and you listening to the sports commentators talk about football and they saying first down and second down and sack, and you don't know what they talking about. So this is going to bring me into what I want to talk about. A lot of times we hear things and people hear things, or they're privy to conversations, or they're around people that have an understanding about a thing. And so what it will do sometimes is make people feel left out. And the people that are having the conversation, they don't necessarily mean for the people to be left out. It's just that we already have this understanding, so we can come into the conversation at this level of understanding. So now, that doesn't mean that I don't want you to understand what I'm saying. I don't want you to get what I'm saying. But let me finish having this conversation with a person or with people at the level of my understanding. Because sometimes I need that. Sometimes it's just like when you go to the gym to work out, right? If you really want to get it in, you need to go. Sometimes you may need to go with someone that's on your level or a little bit above you. Sometimes if you go with someone that's not quite up to your regimen, it can slow you down. It's not that you don't want to see that person succeed. It's just that it's going to slow you down today. You know what I mean? So this brings me to what I want to talk about today. I told you I was going to talk about this today. It's been in my spirit. It's been in my spirit for actually maybe a week or two. But everybody may not come in at the same level of understanding. And the writer of this passage he was talking to specific people. He were talking to people that already had the level of understanding. So I'm gonna come back around to that. But a very, very, very familiar passage of scripture I want to share with you this morning. Just the one verse. It resonates with us that have the understanding. And here it is. Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. I'm going to read that again. We know this by heart, but it just feels good to say it. Don't you just feel something resonate with your spirit when you just declare that out loud? And we know. That's how the preachers do it. That's how the church people do it. On that and we know part. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. My brothers and my sisters, I would encourage you to read this entire chapter once and again today, as a matter of fact, and let it minister to your spirit. This chapter, we know that Paul is talking to the saints. And when you read this chapter again, it's going to feel like Paul is preaching at a service. To me. Now, I'm not claiming to be this Bible scholar. God blesses me, with an understanding through the Holy Ghost, but I'm not walking around here acting like I'm the scholar of the Bible. No. But to me, it feels like Paul is giving a sermon to me. That's how this chapter flows. And so by the time it's like he's reminding us of stuff that we already have an understanding of in the spirit. And how does that understanding come? Well, that understanding comes from having a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so the prerequisite kind of to this passage is an understanding. An understanding that God sent his son Jesus, he loved us so much that Jesus died for our sins. And now we can go boldly before the throne of grace. The fundamentals to Christianity, fundamentals to salvation. That's basically the understanding that we have coming into this text. So we don't have to go over that because we come into it with this understanding. And so all through this chapter is just a reconfirming of what we already know, and it's so encouraging. Thank you, Jesus. I said I was going to deal with that one text, but let me just read 8:1, Romans 8:1. There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Now, he started the chapter saying, hey, remember now, there's therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus. We're in Christ Jesus. So we are already in. Let's go. Let me encourage you today. Who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. It's because we are in Christ Jesus, we know that we don't walk after the flesh. We know that we understand how we have the blueprint on how to walk in the Spirit or after the Spirit. So we understand this. We already know. And so by the time we so built up, by the time he gets to 28, he's basically bringing the sermon home. He almost at his close. You know how it is when a preacher is preaching, and by the time he gets to his close, you so filled with emotion and just you feel with how did they used to say it back in the day? It slips my mind what they giving vent to the preacher. You feel like you preaching by this time when he gets to this part. And we know And means everything I said before is good, and I'm going to add that to this. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. So I asked myself a question. I said, what is his purpose? Let's break it down. We're going to go backwards. To them who are called according to his purpose. What is God's purpose? God's purpose is for us, for his creation, to give him glory. That's his purpose. His purpose is for us to give him glory. Look at it in Genesis. After he made the heavens and the earth, and he told the lights where to be and the stars, and he made everything. He separated the east from the west, the north from the south. After he did all of that, what did he say? He said, you know what? Let us make man. See, he didn't need us here, but he wanted us here. And what is our purpose for being here? What is his purpose for creating us to be here? I'm going to give you the cheat code. It's to give him glory. So here's the position that we should find ourselves in. God, get the glory out of my life. Fix it to where whatever I'm doing, the glory goes to you. All things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are called according to his purpose. Now, Paul is talking to the people that have an understanding. They already have an understanding of God's love. How did they get that understanding? Through relationship. See, the thing about relationships is, what's so special about relationship is that relationships are give and take. It's give and take. That's how we build relationship is through time. How we build relationship is through communication. It's no way that you can build relationship if you don't spend time, if you don't communicate, because if you don't spend time and you don't communicate, then you're not going to know that person. See, the more I spend time with God, I know him. I know him. That's why he started the chapter like he did. There is therefore now no condemnation to them that are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. See, I don't know how not to walk after the flesh unless I spend time with God. In those times, that's when he teaches me. In those times, I learned that through my relationship. And anybody that's in a relationship, a meaningful relationship, you know that thing didn't happen over time. Think about it. If you've been married for, let's just use 10 years. What you know now, you didn't know 10 years ago. And you're no more married now than you were 10 years ago. But the advantage that you have now, and now you have not attained it's a day by day process. So we got to walk daily now. Don't think that we just got a monopoly on this. You still got to walk it out every day. But what time does in a relationship, it builds rapport. And then I know this about this person. I know if I say this is going to do that. But I also know if I do this, they're going to be happy. If I do this, they're going to be sad. If I say this, it's going to be curtains. It's the same thing. But you only learn that with time. So when Paul says the part about works together for good to them that love God, that means you've already spent time with him, because you can't love him and not spend time with him. He said, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. Now, that comes with time, because when you think about keeping a commandment, you don't keep the commandment because it was easy to keep the commandment. You don't keep the commandment because you did not want to do what it is that the commandment goes against. You keep the commandment because you love them. If you love somebody, you don't want to hurt them. That's basically what it is. It's not about some people are just afraid. That's good. But you know what? Some jokers that's not afraid. You know what keeps them? You know what keeps some people? Love. So he's saying, again, and we know all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. And we know that all things. Now that's weighted. That's a lot. All things. This thing, that over there, this that I'm thinking about, this that I got to deal with. All things. You mean when it's good times and bad times, depression, money, all things. You mean when my kids acting up, my stuff ain't right at home, I can't hardly pay my bills, my car broke down, I on my way to work, I got a flat tire, all things. You mean coronavirus and the state of our world, the election, Donald Trump, just death, calamity, all things, my God, are working together for the good. To them that love God and are called according to his purpose. See, this is the last thing. I'm gonna try to make this the last thing that I bring out in this. See, you got to understand. Although God is not a respecter of person, he does show favor to those that he is in relationship with. Yes. While God is not a respecter of person, I promise you today that if you are in relationship with him, there is some favor that you have access to. And if I was in a church setting, I would tell you to tell somebody, don't be mad at my favor. You don't know what it took for me to get this favor. You don't know how I had to deny myself to get this favor. You don't know the sacrifices that were made to get this favor. I'm not complaining about it, but what I'm telling you is there is discipline that it takes to get this favor. There is time spent to get this favor. And let's just look at this text one more time so we can see where the favor is in this text. And we know that all things work together for good. Here's the favor to them that love God. Does it mean that it won't work out for good to people that don't love God? I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, what I know is he just gave me favor because he said to them that love God. If I love him, that means I know him. If I love him, that means I've spent time with him. I've been in relationship with him. And he turned around and gave me favor and said, all things work together. The things I don't understand, the things that make you say, man, this is too much, God. But God has a way of working that thing out. As a matter of fact, he already has worked it out. he already has the moving parts. This is just a part of the story that God has already written. We say this almost I know I say this every day. But God has already done everything that's going to be done. And because he is the writer, producer, creator, he's the only person that can go and switch things around. Change that thing around. So let me end by this. There was a comedian. He didn't know. He didn't know that he was ministering. But he said, you find yourself trying things and trying things and trying things. Don't work. Trying things. That didn't work. Doing this. That didn't work. Well, let me help you, brothers and sisters. Find your place in God. Find your place with God. Seek out a relationship with Jesus Christ. And this will be your testimony. And we know. And then you got to say it like the church people. You got to get loud. And we know. You got to make this your declaration and your mantra. And we know all things. That's everything that could ever happen. All things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. I feel good now. Here is the B selection. And I'm going to have it together when I get back. For the good of them. This is the Mike Brown Morning Show. I'll be back. Let me show you all what the equivalent of pardoning yourself is. And pardon, basically, in my definition, you can go look it up if you want to get the formal definition of it, but it's excuse me, basically. Sometimes people say excuse me. Sometimes people say pardon me. Like, if you can't hear somebody, you'll say excuse me or pardon me. Or if you need to interrupt somebody, you'd say excuse me, pardon me. You kind of get where I'm going, right? So it's usually involving a person giving it or giving the courtesy or the action of pardon to somebody else. Think of an instance where you can say to yourself, excuse me, to yourself, pardon me, Michael. That sounds insane, right? That sounds like a crazy person, right? So those are two instances right there that I just gave you. Pardoning yourself is the equivalent of saying, I'm going to get married, but I'm going to perform the ceremony myself. That's how stupid that sounds. That is on the level of, you know what? I think I'm going to pardon myself. That's how dumb that is. Let me see if I can think of another one. I thought I was going to have more. If it comes back up, I'll bring it back to you. In the meantime, let's hear what the pundits have to say about said subject. Which pundits am I speaking of? I'm speaking of the CNN pundits. They are the most, they're not the most entertaining, but they are quite entertaining. So let's see what they have to say about the whole matter. I'll be back.
Despite his refusal to admit it, President Trump's time in the White House is coming to an end, and that puts the issue of presidential pardons front and center. This afternoon, we are getting to reporting on how the president might use this power on the way out, whether he might actually try to pardon himself. Evan Perez has a scoop for us on this. And so what do you know about what the president could be thinking here?
Well, Brooke, first, the president has to move to the acceptance part of his
Right.
grief. He's got to work that out. But once he does, I mean, we were told that he's already had conversations with people close to him, some of his aides, to look into this question of exactly how much of these pardons he can do. Now, the easy part for him is that he already has talked a lot on Twitter about some of the people who were involved in the Mueller investigation, people in his campaign who he believes were unfairly targeted simply because they were with him. And those people, of course, include Michael Flynn, his first national security advisor, who's still in court trying to get out of his conviction, or rather his guilty plea, Paul Manafort, his former campaign chairman, and of course, the big question is, what does he do about his family and himself? Now, that's a big question. The president on Twitter mused about this issue in 2018. He said that he believes he has the power to self-pardon. I'll tell you that the Justice Department looked at this question back in the Richard Nixon era in 1974, and they said, quote, under the fundamental rule that no one may be a judge in his own case, the president cannot pardon himself. Now, there's a lot of disagreement constitutionally as to whether or not this would be legal, but there's another way for the president to take care of this. He could temporarily step down, and Mike Pence could act as president and give him such a pardon before the president leaves office in January 20th. Of course, Brooke, the big thing here for the president, even if he gets a federal pardon, this does not solve all of his problems, his legal issues.
New York State, right?
Right, New York State and other states could have investigations into his company. We know that those are looking as to whether or not, looking into the big questions of whether or not there was any tax crimes that were committed. So the president is not out of the woods, even if he gives himself a pardon before January 20th.
Just when you think you had covered it all, Evan Perez.
Yep, not over.
Not over. Evan, thank you. Let's talk about all that. Garrett Graff is a CNN contributor, and Anna Navarro is a CNN political commentator. Welcome to both of you. And Garrett, let's start on pardons. I mean, the president potentially pardoning himself. What say you?
I agree with Evan that it does not seem that is necessarily something that would hold up in court. One wrinkle, though, in this is a corporation pardon. We have never seen in U.S. history a corporation pardon before, but it does seem like Trump could potentially pardon the Trump organization, and that could hold up in court if he wanted to try to wipe away some of the legal challenges that might face his presidency and his business after he leaves office.
Okay, I'm going to put a to be continued on that. We'll move on. Anna Navarro, Republicans, your party. We are seeing a few Republicans emerging. Senators Grassley and Thune. While saying on one hand Joe Biden should receive the presidential daily briefings, on the other they've stopped short of calling him the president-elect. Is this creative semantics? What would you like to say to these members of your own party?
Enough is enough. Look, they know. They absolutely know. There's no way you can tell me that Lindsey Graham does not know that Joe Biden is the president-elect and Donald Trump lost. Grassley knows it. Langford knows it. Everybody knows it. This is far from being Florida 2000, okay? We're talking about 4 states, and we're talking about margins in the double digits of tens of thousands. So knock it off, guys. You cannot call yourself the National Security Party. You cannot call yourself the pro-military party and sit there in silence while you watch a demented, delusional man in denial just strip the Defense Department and strip the DHS department and get rid of everybody who doesn't go along with the idea that he's lost. And at the same time, not allowing Joe Biden to put a team together, to have the intelligence necessary. This makes us vulnerable. And I know that they know, because, I know Lindsey Graham, there's no way he can be pretending that he doesn't.
Are you talking to them and saying, yes?
Lindsey, Okay, it's one thing for Trump to be crazy. It's another thing to put the country in a threat, in a position of being vulnerable, in a position where an international foe can take advantage of this chaos and this lack of preparation. This is no joke. We have got to come together. We've got to make sure that Joe Biden has got his team in place and has got the intelligence necessary. And listen, it's time to unchain themselves from the albatross that has been Donald Trump around the neck of Republicans for the last 4 years, not allowing them to have their own convictions.
Stay tuned, because maybe in 4 more years, Garrett, sources are telling CNN that they expect Trump to tease this potential 2024 run when he does finally acknowledge the election results. These sources are telling us that they expect, Trump to dismiss 2020 as fraudulent, but they expect him to hint that he's running again in 4 years. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think you're right, Brooke, to look at his long-term influence on the party, because if you look at a figure like Sarah Palin, who was also so polarizing and so inspirational to the Republicans, her peak influence in the party actually came in the 2010 midterms after she lost to Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And I think that there's a lot to augur and hint at the fact that the most MAGA-ish days of the Republican Party might actually come in 2022 or 2024. Because remember, even if Donald Trump ultimately decides not to run, there are other family members who have those aspirations. I mean, you could imagine, for instance, Ivanka Trump running against AOC in the New York Senate race in 2022. Or what if Don Jr., who in many ways has been the most popular Trump family surrogate, decides that he wants to carry the MAGA banner forward in 2024.
What is Anna Navarro, you hear all of that Garrett's throwing out, not necessarily an impossibility. Ivanka, Don Jr., the Drain the Swampiness may not have seen its best heyday until, the next couple of years. Is that possible? What do Republicans you're talking to say?
Look, I think there's no way that Donald Trump goes quietly into the good night, okay? He feeds off the rallies, he feeds off the crowds, and he's got a database of 70 million donors, and he's a marketer and a brand person at heart, and he's going to find a way to monetize that and to continue wielding influence and to continue feeding his ego with the rallies and the applause. Maybe ABC should just do us all a favor and cast him on Dancing with the Stars so he can go do his Macho Man dance and
really
still get
that?
votes. Yeah, no, I'm good with that. If they want to put all of them on there, put Ivanka, put Kaylee, put them all on Dancing with the Stars so they can get their kicks and they can get their applause lines and they can be in the limelight and they can get somebody voting for them, even if it's, for Who Danced Macho Man or YMCA best. But I don't think he's going away. And whether he runs or not in 2024, I can tell you he's going to continue teasing it and talking about it and keep it dangling in front of Republicans as a way to keep Republicans disciplined and in line and not rejecting him. And also because he is going to find a way to make a buck out of this. Make no mistake about that. Whether it's a network or whether it's giving speeches and charging for rally attendance, whatever it is, believe me, this man is going to find a way to make a buck out of it, because also he's got debts. Let's not forget that little detail.
Right. I'm still back on Macho Man, and you gave me a visual, Anna Navarro, that I'm not really happy with. So thanks for that today. Anna Navarro and Garrett Graff. Guys, thank you both so much for all of that, and I think both of you are spot.
That lady said, I'm sick of them. She said, ABC, why don't y'all just put them on there on the Dancer with the Stars? But to be honest with you, this is how I feel too, because I think that if somebody offered Donald Trump something like to keep him in the limelight, he will walk away from the presidency so fast. Because it's about visibility for Trump. Like, it's not even about power, because the way that our government is set up, although what it may look like sometimes is that the president has the power, he really don't. Now, there are some things that the president can just veto or do before Congress or Senate meets, but he really don't have the power. If you don't believe me, go study the United States government. There are 3 branches of government. The reason that there are 3 branches of government is so that there will be checks and balances, so that everything won't come from one branch, so that they won't lose their whole mind like Trump is trying to do. And that's why ain't nobody really tripping. It's like, okay, due process, go ahead and do your little lawsuits. Due process. Ain't nobody gonna hold you back. But at the end of the day, that's why these systems are in place. You can't be in America and dictate to nobody. Period. That ended with slavery. They dictated to the slaves. But that's over. That's not happening again, especially not to that level. So he may as well go sit down somewhere. And if he, like they said earlier in that dialogue, they said, if you care about your legacy, you might want to think about just going on and conceding. But then at the same time, he might want to be infamous. He may want to be, I think I said this yesterday. Was I on the radio when I said this? I said that maybe he wants to be, yeah, I was. Maybe he wants to be that guy that when you watch that show, The Presidents, they talk about him and have the worst to say about him. Maybe that's what he wants. I don't know. But I know this is foolish and foolery. But don't sweat it, though. Now, although there are some things that are going to be happening as a result of this, but I am so settled and okay with the outcome of the presidency. It's all good, man. That is all good. Don't even worry about that. What is he going? He going to make himself be president? Is he going, since he talking about pardoning himself, is he going to swear himself in? Come on, y'all. I'm going to use Sleepy Joe's word. That's malarkey. You can't, come on. All these years, Donald Trump is going to change the law. What? That's foolishness. If you say it out loud, you'll sound dumb to yourself. Donald Trump is going to change the law. Say that out loud and see how dumb that sounds. So, my word to you is don't even worry about that. That ain't nothing. All right, I'll be back. When I come back, we're going to talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Chapter 4. Grab somebody. Go get your kids. Let this be a part of their lesson today. They work from home school situation. I'll be back.
Wake up. Right here.
The Mike Brown Morning Show.
Wake up, baby, when you wake up, hit it in the morning.
Heard weekdays 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Right here on the Urban Uplift.
Stay lifted.
Stay lifted.
The Urban Uplift.
With us, we never take it lightly. And I want to give a shout out to Phil Bates. He hit me up and said, "Hey man, put your link in your bio on Instagram." And it didn't occur to me that I kind of thought that I did, but I didn't. Turned out that I didn't. I mean, and then I also thought that I had a video on the page that explained how to download the app and things of that nature. So, I mean, shout out. Thanks, man, it's good to know that people pay attention. And I appreciate it. I'm not one of those proud people and act like I don't need help. I need help. I'm always talking about building community. If you all see something that I can do better, or if you can contribute in any way, I don't think you're robbery if you do. So, shout out to Phil. We've been trying to add elements to keep y'all interested. Those of you that are subscribed to the YouTube channel, you saw that yesterday we had videos up, and we're looking to do more of that and to make it better. Whatever we do, we want to do it in the spirit of excellency. Excellence. The spirit of excellence. So, yeah, that's what we do here. So, again, thanks, Phil. And if y'all see where you can be of help, just be of help. Yeah. In that vein, if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, you can do that now. Go to the Mike Brown Morning Show on YouTube, and we're going to come right up. Now, there was a time that we didn't come right up. But now, if you type us in, we come right up. I need you to subscribe. I need everybody that's already let me slow down. I need everybody that's already subscribed to get another person to subscribe as well. Okay? Thank you. All right, let's get into it. Chapter 4. The history of taxes and the power of corporations. That's basically what this chapter talks about. A lot of the things in this book are kind of redundant, but maybe that's the wrong word. They're repetitive. That's a better word. A lot of things in this book are repetitive, but they build on each other. And repetitiveness is a great teacher. It's a great tool to teach. So if you're getting tired of hearing about taxes, then you may as well get tired of, you probably don't want to listen to this show. But if you tired of hearing about taxes, then you're not interested in being in a better financial situation. Those are just the facts. So we talk about in this chapter this idea of people having the Robin Hood mentality. And Robert tells a story of when he was in grade school, how the story of Robin Hood was told. And basically Robin Hood would rob from the rich and give to the poor. And that's kind of the mentality that a lot of people in America have adopted. Take from the rich, give to the poor. And so I'm going to try to go in a little format. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Robert pointed out that Rich Dad played the game smart through corporations. And what he's saying is, if you establish a corporation, you're able to, for lack of a better word, you're able to control. I was going to say shelter, but I changed my mind. You're able to control how you spend your taxes. Now, here's the thing. You're going to have to pay taxes, but you get to choose how much and when you pay them when you have a corporation. He goes on to say that a corporation is nothing more than paperwork. So you mean to say then that the difference between someone that's able to control when they pay their taxes and someone that can't or don't is paperwork? Yeah. So, and I'm glad I just saw a post that my cousin put up on Facebook. Let me see if I can find it. It shows a person at a fountain drink machine, and one of the drink selections is work a 9 to 5. Let me see if I can find this thing, because I ain't gonna be able to do it justice if I don't find it. Okay, one of the drink selections that the person had, it's a lady that she has pressed, is working a 9 to 5 to fund my business. And then she's in the same cup, she's also mixing in another drink. And the name of this drink is called Working on a Plan to Leave My 9 to 5 to Focus 100% on my business. See, a lot of people think that because you have a job that you cannot have a business, or that because you have a job, you should not have a business. Then there are those that just jump completely off the cliff and start a business and quit their job. I don't suggest you do that. But then at the same time, your faith may be at a place where you can do that. Everybody's faith ain't there. And I don't suggest you do that, especially if you got mouths to feed and people to provide for. You can't do that. Now, if you just by yourself and you can live in a studio apartment and you can lift your rent or you can DoorDash your rent, then by all means, quit your job. But if you got people to look out to take care of, and if something happened, you got to be the one to address it, you probably shouldn't quit your job. You should start a business. You should start a corporation. But you got to figure out how to, and I'm trying to stay on track, but you got to figure out how to accumulate assets. And those assets become your income. And it just opens you up to endless possibilities financially. Okay, so Robert considers this a secret. Like this, he feels like this is one of the biggest secrets that the rich people can keep. And they've been keeping it for some while. This book, I believe, came out, I think this book came out in 94. And from 94 until now, almost 30 years, people still are not aware of the information that's in this book. I mean, just do a poll of the people that you know. And imagine yourself talking in your circle about this information. Do you know some people will be looking at you like you crazy? And some will be like, what are you talking about? Here you go again with that crazy stuff. When it is that this is life-changing information. If you don't think it's life-changing information, talk to somebody that has a business during the pandemic. When you got a $1,200 check, ask them how much of a check did they get. Then we'll address whether or not this is not life-changing information. A lot of times what separates us from where we could be is the lack of knowledge, and we just need that knowledge. All right, I'm going to try to keep going. I only got a few minutes now. Man, where does the time go? So we see in this chapter that it wasn't until 1913 that income tax became permanent in America. So what does that mean? So that means that when there was a situation where the country needed money, that's when people would be taxed. But it was not on a consistent basis until 1913. And the reason that is because remember if you in history when we learned about the Boston Tea Party, we know that the whole reason for that is because the colonies were getting taxed, but they did not have, or they didn't feel like they had representation. And so that's where the phrase comes, taxation without representation. They was done with it. And then after that, we know they separated from Britain, the Revolutionary War, and all of that stuff. So taxes were a bad taste. And according to this book, taxes were not just a bad taste in the mouths of the Americans, but also the British. And so it wasn't until 50 years or so after the Boston Tea Party that either country brought up the subject of taxes again. So we see here that it was in 1913 that America adopted permanent tax. So the idea at first was the Robin Hood idea. We're only going to tax the rich, and then we'll distribute it amongst the middle class and the poor. Or we'll distribute it in a way that we think is equitable, or in a way that we think that the country can be sustained. Now, do I think that's fair? No, I don't think that's fair. There are a lot of reasons I don't think it's fair. Should we give to the poor? Absolutely, we should. Should we be made to? No, we shouldn't. And that goes into deeper conversations. I don't want to get too deep on you, but even Jesus tells us how we should give. But I ain't gonna go there. I'm gonna try not to. Let me try to stay with this book. Not the Bible. I'm talking about Rich Dad Poor Dad. Okay. So Robert's takeaway from this whole thing is why. Okay, so here's why the taxes didn't just stop with the rich. Robert's calculation is once the government got a taste of the money that they were getting from the rich because they were taxing the rich, then the appetite for money grew. I mean, that's kind of like anything you can think about, anything you can kind of think of relating to money. Like, for example, remember when the Impossible Burger came out? They were 2 for $5. Now, I mean, I know that was a test to see how well they would sell and things of that nature. But although they were 2 for $5, some way, somehow, Burger King was still profitable. They're not going to sell an item and not be profitable. I don't care if they tested it or not. Otherwise, you can't be in business, right? But now, if you go to buy an Impossible Burger, one burger is $5. Or just about. It might be even a little more. Why is that? The appetite for money grew. And if I know that I can get it, then why not get it? See, that's where that greed comes in at. So now one Impossible Burger is $5, but people still buying it. So look at that the other way around. If you're the government and you're taxing the rich and you got so much money to give and place in places that you wanted to go, then if I got this much money, how much more would I have if I taxed the middle class person? Then you have much more. If we got this much for taxing the middle class, how much will we have if we tax the poor? Or the blue collar worker. And so there you have it. So now what was meant for the rich now is everybody being taxed. But the rich figured out how to control it. And how do they control it? Through corporations. Before I get there, here's something that Robert said about the rich not being taxed. He said the rich will never be taxed. More and more often, we see governments use the tax laws to provide incentives to business owners and investors to create jobs and housing. These incentives reduce the taxes of the rich, so the only place for the government to drive tax revenue is from the middle class. See? So, and here's the crazy thing. The people that are losing the most in this whole tax fight and battle are the middle class. It's like they in that sweet spot. And the government like, yeah, we can get them. You make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. I got you. Yeah, it's unfortunate. And I say this often, especially coming up to the election. A lot of these conversations we not even in yet. 'Cause when I say we, I'm talking about everybody that don't make that much money yet. I'm going to be a millionaire. I will be a part of those conversations, and I will be controlling how I spend my tax dollars. But right now, all that's over our heads. So when they come talking that stuff, getting your vote, you voting for them, and it ain't got nothing to do with you. If you are, I could be talking to a whole bunch of rich people. So if that's you, I ain't talking to you. I'm talking to people that's not rich. So then it begins this conversation of so Robert considered his rich dad a capitalist and his educated dad, which he called poor dad, a socialist. And a socialist subscribes to socialism. So I know we discussed the definition of these words before, but let's discuss them again. A capitalist is a person who has capital, especially invested in business, or a person with wealth. All right. That's a capitalist. They are pro-business, pro-assets, pro-money. A socialist is a person that subscribes to socialism. Let's look at the definition of socialism. There are several definitions, but let's use. I lost it. Let me get back to it. All right. So the definition of socialism. I'm gonna read all the definitions. I think any of various economic and political theories advocating collective or governmental ownership and administration of the means of production and distribution of goods. I'm going to read the first part again. Any of various economic and political theories advocating collective or governmental ownership. You know, that's all. So, I mean, again, it's the theory of taking from the rich and distributing amongst the poor. A system of society or group living in which there is no private property. Can you imagine that? A system or condition of society in which the means of production are owned and controlled by the state. No, people know we not living like that. That's not how we're going to do this. Okay? And the very people that advocate for that, they own they stuff too. Come on, y'all. All right, and so we move along into now Robert is showing us how, Robert uses a lot of diagrams. By now we see that, right? So he shows us a corporation's income statement. And this is how the income statement looks from a corporation. The cash flow flows a little bit different. So you see these three diagrams. You see the corporation income statement, then you see the personal income statement, and then you see the personal balance sheet. Well, when it comes to a corporation, this is how the cash flows. It starts with the assets. So if you have a corporation, you want to figure out how to have assets be the source of the funding for the corporation. Right? And that's when we remember the last chapter, or maybe chapter 2, but remember when we got into the conversation of, and we jumped ahead. We were too far ahead. But remember when we got into the conversation of the business owner versus the self-employed person? How it is that the self-employed person, they're basically they're an employee, but they own their job. Basically, they can only get paid for what they can do. If they can't do it, they can't get paid. So that means that they are their only asset. But the problem with that is you have times as a human that you have to sit down or that you have to go to sleep. And so that means that your income potential during that time is done until you can do again, right? And so here's the benefit of an asset. An asset works at all times. So the challenge is, to become a business owner, I have to figure out how to acquire an asset that's going to work all the time. So let's look back at this diagram. The assets flow out into the income of the corporation. So I like to use real estate because that's an easy illustration. So the name of your corporation is ABC Real Estate, okay, or Real Estate Holdings or whatever. In short, you own some houses, right? As a business owner, those houses are now assets for your corporation. Those assets, when people pay you rent or when people pay their lease or however you use those homes, that money that flows through, that is the income for the corporation. So the income is produced straight out of the assets. In other words, if we didn't have any assets, we wouldn't have had any income. So now those assets become income. Now, do you see how it's flowing from the income column in the corporation income statement, and then it flows into the personal income statement? How can that happen? Let me tell you how. Because although it is ABC as a corporation, you, John Doe, you are the owner of ABC Corporation. So that income, to a certain degree, is allowed to flow into your personal income statement. Right? And then look how it's flowing out. Look how the expenses flow out. This is what makes it good. This is how you begin to learn how to control your taxes. This is just the beginning of the learning. This is not all of it. This is just an eye-opener. The expenses in your personal income statement then flow into the expense column of the corporation. So you hurry up and get those expenses out of your personal expenses. Flow those expenses back into the corporation expenses. Then what happens when I do that? When those expenses are now expenses of ABC Real Estate or ABC Real Estate Holdings, whatever you call your company, then now I'm able to do what's called write-offs. The government allows it. It's lawful. So, and Robert explains it in his way about if now your vacation in Hawaii is a board meeting. That's an expense. It's a business expense. Because me and whoever works for me, that might be your spouse in that situation. That might be your children. Well, let's talk a little business while we're here for 5 minutes. Now, that's a business trip. Now, you're going to save money for spending money to go to Hawaii for vacation / business trip. How is that possible? Because I have a corporation. And it's legit because the asset is what paid me income. But it doesn't just stop there, folks. I feel like I'm getting ahead. Okay. So he also goes on to talk about how so a person that works when you work your job, the more money you make on your job, let's say you make $20 an hour, right? And you work 40 hours a week. Let's say this week you got overtime, right? So you got all kind of time and a half. Let's say you worked instead of 20 hours, you work 45 hours. So that means you got 25 hours of time and a half. I mean, instead of 40 hours, you worked 65 hours. So that means in that 1 week, you got 25 hours of time and a half. So you got paid $30 for 25 of those hours. Well, what happens is you're going to make a lot more money in your check, but they're going to take a lot more money out of your check. Well, in a corporation, the more money that your assets make, the more money that you can keep, the more things that you can write off. Now, here's the thing. When the reason you can do that is because when you and Robert, please, if you haven't read it, you got to go read it for yourself so you can understand where I'm coming from with this. And I got to go after this. But when you own property, and I'm using property because that's what Robert likes to use, you get to pay your taxes last. But you get to pay them last because there are certain laws that support that. For example, there's a real estate law that says if you buy a house, you don't have to pay taxes until you liquidate, meaning that you sell the house. But if you buy a house and sell a house to buy another house, you still don't have to pay taxes because you haven't liquidated. That's another cheat code. So we're gonna pick back up on this. It's still some meat on the bone for chapter 4. We're gonna pick back up on chapter 4 on next week. It's been a great day here on the Mike Brown Morning Show. I hope that you enjoyed the show. Do me a favor and tell somebody to join you the next time that you hang out with us. We're going to leave out today. Well, first, I want you to have a wonderful, prosperous weekend. Do something fun. Do something great. Have a great time. If it ain't too cold, if you live in the Midwest, go to the apple orchard, or some of you call it the cider mill. Have a good weekend. And we're going to holler at you on Monday. Hopefully, I think we're going to have Quez back on Monday, and we're going to do church recap. So have a prosperous weekend. Here's Dietrich Haddon with Open Door Season. Peace.